This, this is so funny. This is a song by a guy named Jonsi, and Jonsi. He's an Icelandic singer who is the lead singer for a group called Sigur Rós. And I just love their music, and I was listening to it in my office while Jay Bernhard emails me and says, oh, by the way, can you come up with some song that would introduce you? Because that's what we're doing this year. And I just thought, wow, yeah. And I looked up what this song was called, and it was called Go Do. And it just sparked all these new feelings and emotions about what this talk could be. And I kept thinking, I'm so glad I wasn't listening to Highway to Hell by AC/DC. But this really did get me thinking. We all know that our personal decisions are the leading cause of death. We all know that over half of the deaths in our country are related to the decisions we make. We all know that this is kind of the direction people take. Our personal decisions lead to various conditions and causes, which lead to medical causes of death, which leads to death, right? So that's what we've been, focusing on for our entire careers, really, that idea of death. Now, in 1993, we started thinking about how computers might change patient education, health education, and public health in general. And this is well before the internet. It was interesting to be working in this area, and we were really blessed, frankly, to have Apple computers coming out with desktop publishing that allowed us to start tailoring print materials at a very early period that then transitioned into the internet and now into mobile technology and now in the near future into quantified self kinds of programs. So we had built this kind of center, we had developed a lot of different research, and then in 1997 I started feeling a frustration that what I was doing wasn't getting out into the real world. And so we decided to set up a business. This was done with a guy named Vic Strecher, who had just gotten out of Gateway Computers. And in 1998, he came into my lab, and we had a 1-hour meeting scheduled. I didn't even know what a venture capitalist was at the time. He had set up this new venture capital company. And he said, well, I think this should be an industry, actually, what you're doing. And if we set up a business, we'll do good things. We'll be profitable, or we won't be. So it's important to be profitable. And we'll have to have fun. If we don't have fun, we won't really have a good business. So we have to do those three things. Rick, by the way, is now the governor of the state of Michigan, and our state last year was 49th in terms of business optimism shown in a large national survey of businessmen. Now it's number 7, and it's the second fastest growing state in the country right now. He's really set up an environment to have fun, frankly, and set up new things. This is what health media was designed to do. It was designed to be revolutionary. It was designed to be disruptive. It was designed to move in and be what's called a blue ocean strategy rather than a red ocean strategy. We weren't in it to start fighting and beating up all the existing other companies, in a small pool. We wanted to open up this whole field to the ocean, in other words, to the public's health. So we started building programs that were disruptive.
1,000 songs in your pocket. Now you can, thanks to digital music. There was a time when you couldn't move $1,000 from savings to checking before the bank opened on Monday. Now you can, thanks to digital banking. And if you wanted professional, confidential health guidance on a wide variety of topics, customized to meet your needs in one place, 24/7, well, guess what? Now you can, thanks to digital health coaching. Here's how it works. Like any good coach, the more we know about you, the more we can help. So we ask questions, you give answers. We think about what you said. Then, drawing on the knowledge of thousands of healthcare professionals in dozens of fields, we create a personalized action plan as individual as your fingerprint. Next, we go over your plan with you and give you powerful tools to help you overcome challenges and reach your goals. And because we care about your success, we check in with you to see how you're doing as you continue to make the small changes in your life that add up to big improvements in your health. One more thing, you can trust us to keep your personal information private and secure. It's the law. Think of us as a health coach for the digital age. Our unique, revolutionary approach has already helped millions, one at a time. And now, we're ready to help you.
So far in the 13 years that health media has been around, we've reached over 40 million people, and that's growing now like a hockey stick. It's growing extremely fast every year. We have a large number of different programs that are tailored to be fitting to your very specific needs and to follow you up over the long run. We're linking with EMRs such as Epic, with Kaiser Permanente, and a number of other groups. We're linking with biometrics. We're linking with health coaches. And we're linking with large campaigns. This is the Thrive campaign. If you're from California, you're probably familiar with this campaign that is designed to encourage people to start becoming more active in their own health care and more proactive in the personal decisions that they're making. This is one of the commercials from it.
Wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, or the times they are a-changing.
So the idea is that people would watch this commercial and then go to kp.org and start using these programs. By the way, this is the first commercial Bob Dylan ever allowed his song to be on, because he was actually personally intrigued by this overall program. So this company reached over 185 people, and then it was sold to Johnson & Johnson. Now it's changed its name overall. There's an umbrella name called Wellness and Prevention, and we're continuing to add new companies. I consult for them, but I'm not an employee for them, just to let you know. But I do consult for them, so I have that conflict. But I'm not going to talk about that stuff anymore. I just thought I'd get it out of the way to let you know what I've been doing in the past. Again, this song, Go Do, got me thinking in a different way about this talk. I started thinking, what are the things that we really need to be doing now that we haven't been doing? What are the things that we're hitting the wall in that we really do need to solve? And let's be self-effacing a little bit and maybe a little self-critical and go, what are the issues that we have to face if we're going to survive and actually become a true inspiration and influence on the public's health? So, one of the things that bugs me now about new media is that people don't talk to each other anymore. I teach a class now of about 100 people, and almost all of them had their laptops open on the first day of class. Almost all of them. And I knew darn well that I would be competing with eBay, while I'm actually talking, and a lot of people would be emailing each other, oh, this guy's good, oh, he's full of himself, oh, whatever, And I didn't want to. I said, would you all mind just shutting everything down? It's really essential that you do that. And here's why. Because, computers have allowed us to extend our desk, but at the same time, in extending our desk, we've also extended our work life to almost 80 hours a week. It's insane how we work right now. I mean, it really is. Everywhere we go, every hour of the day and many hours of the night, we're involved in stuff. And, there's a great study at Stanford by a guy named Baba Shiv, B-A-B-A-S-H-I-V, world's greatest name, first of all. So Baba Shiv put students in a room and he asked them to memorize a 7-digit number. And randomly he asked another group of students to memorize a 2-digit number. And he said, you know what, we're going to go out of this room into a hall, into another room, and I'm going to ask you to repeat these numbers that we've been asking you to memorize back to us in a few minutes. So keep that number in your head. And then in the hallway, there were some snacks for people, and there are two kinds of snacks. There were fruit snacks, and there was chocolate cake. Nice. So they could pick. Now, the real experiment was not whether they could repeat back the number. The real experiment was if we load up their cognition, if we provide cognitive load and load up their short-term memory, would they be more susceptible to eating the chocolate cake and less likely to eat the fruit because they can't think as clearly? And sure enough, that's exactly what they found. The people with high cognitive load, only 37% ate the fruit. I think this is a fascinating study. This is one of those studies that sticks with me. Every once in a while, you read hundreds of studies, but every once in a while, one sticks with it and goes, wow, that's simple, but not simple-minded. It's such an elegant study demonstrating how our world, as it's getting crazier and crazier, is making us less able to make competent decisions. So one of the things that I would love to see in terms of go do Go develop some programs that help actually simplify our lives with these stupid machines that we have. We have more and more machines everywhere, and we're getting more and more nuts. So that's not good. It's really having almost the opposite effect. The idea of tailoring, I always thought, was to remove all the extraneous junk that you get so that it's just focused on you. Well, in part we've done that, but really we seem to be so addicted to this stuff that it's a real problem. So we need to do something about that. Here's another thing we need to go do. We need to get the frog to jump. You've heard of this metaphor. You put a frog in cold water and you heat the water up very slowly and the frog boils to death. You put the frog in boiling water and it hops out right away. Have you heard this? Inconvenient truth. You know, both right and left-wing people who are paranoid love talking about the boiling frog metaphor. By the way, really, you know, so again, you put the frog in boiling water, it jumps out right away. In other words, you know, our problems, when they are instantly exposed to us and they're instantly big, we go, oh crap, we've got to jump. We've got to change right away. Fine, no problem. But if we gradually heat, like many of our problems, oh, poor tadpole, sorry. Like many of our problems, from global warming to obesity, these are gradual problems, gradual heating, right? Oh, by the way, is the frog metaphor true? Who thinks it's true? Who thinks it's false? Come on. There's not that many undecideds. Oh, you just don't really know. Okay, well, I actually went back, because I'm writing a graphic novel, and these are some of the images from my graphic novel. And I decided to go back and see whether it's true. Turns out in the 19th century, a whole bunch of Victorian researchers decided to boil frogs very slowly to see whether they would jump out or whatever. Turns out that it's not true unless you very, very slowly, like literally half a degree at a time, every minute are increasing it, and then indeed the frog will stand there and boil to death. The other way is if you remove the frog's brain. Yeah, right. Nice experiment. Jeez, Victorian researchers. Anyway, these are big issues. You know, we've known for a long time, you read these packs, you know, that scary messages on packs, and now we go, oh, well, you know, they're not scary enough because people aren't quitting smoking, so let's make them even scarier. Well, you know what? I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. Yeah, we can scare the crap out of people and continue to scare the crap out of people, and now we're building all sorts of new programs, and it's being endorsed by major organizations in our government to try to just scare the crap out of people more and more and more. And there's very, very little evidence that that actually has an impact, and some people are starting to chime up about that and saying, wait a second, I'm not sure this is great, that we continue and as a last resort, essentially, to just scare the crap out of people, because I just don't know whether it works. How do you get this frog out of the boiling water? That's something that I started really thinking about a lot last summer. What do you do? And why do they stay in the water? You know, even like when you do give them a scary message on a cigarette pack, why do they just stay there and continue to smoke? So one of the reasons, well, you know, this frog would go, well, what do you know? Are you an expert on boiling water? First of all, they do question the credibility of the source, right? This water isn't so hot, so they deny it, right? I don't know about cigarettes or, you know, whatever. There are frogs in much worse condition than me, so they make downward comparisons very often. Oh, I know other people who smoke a lot more, and they live to be a million. Now go away. I'm getting kind of sleepy. That's kind of the type of thing that we might get in that experience. That's what we call defensiveness, right? I wanted to explore this idea of defensiveness really carefully, and there's actually, just over the last 2 years, there's a lot of new research being done on this concept of why are people so defensive. So, you know, what we really want is whatever health messages we have, we want people to go, whoa, I never heard that before, thank you very much, I am changing. I was Saul, I'm on the road to Damascus, and my God, your health message through your mobile phone turned me into Paul, thank God. So that's really what you want, right? And then you've obviously changed. So isn't that what we really want? We dream for that. We beg for that, right? And so all of our studies are based on, can we build just the right message? Shakespeare says words are swords. Okay, what's the right sword? So let's figure that out. Here's what people thought was the right message in the 1970s. The Carter Center, Healthier People, Health Risk Assessment. So I took this I took it about 5 years ago, actually. So I filled it out. I was 51 years old, I'm 56 now. I started putting in, you know, my height and my weight. I'm 6'3", I weigh 200 pounds, you know, body frame size. I put in all sorts of information, you know, about the kinds of foods that I eat, blah, blah, blah. And then it gives me my age on the upper left side, 51, and then it says your risk age, you're 46. Nice. What is your target age, risk age? Oh, I'm now 46.19, I could be 46.13. Are you kidding? Nice. Okay, what do I have to do to become 46.13? I can't wait. And it says at the bottom, well, bring your weight to a desirable range to improve your risk profile. How much would I gain? 0.06 years. I calculate that's 23 days. In the airport last night, as my plane was delayed, I decided to go into the Mexican restaurant, and I had this enormous plate of nachos, and I was literally thinking about this, and I said, you know, I can have these nachos and just die like 23 days early. Are you kidding me? I don't even care about my life when I'm that old. So I might as well do that. That's a great deal. Is that motivating? Did I go, aha? I don't think so. So a lot of health risk appraisals, a lot of my students say, well, isn't it kind of a boring questionnaire telling you what you know already? You'd have to pay me to take one of these. And I started thinking about that, and I realized we do pay people to take these. Johnson & Johnson pays their over 100,000 employees $500 each to take a health risk appraisal. And that's not the only company that does this. Some companies pay $1,000. Often they're paying, and it's very common to be paying $150, $200, $300 to take a health risk appraisal. Now, how perverse is that? We are paying you, I'm going to pay you to take this thing that's good for you. What if I said, this water, I'll pay you $500 to drink this water? Well, of course you drink it, right? But what would you be thinking? What's wrong with this water? Man, what did Vic put in this water? Why does he want me to drink this water? Why is he paying me $500 for this water? I thought water was good for you. So, you know, in other words, what's wrong? And then the next time I say, oh, would you drink this Sprite? Yeah, if you pay me $500, I will. In other words, whenever, and we've been looking at this pretty carefully, whenever we're working with a company that's paying a lot of money to take a health risk appraisal, and then they ask the person, oh, well, you're overweight. Would you like to take Balance, the weight management program? Yeah, how much are you going to pay me? That's a perverse incentive in my mind. Why should we be building products that we have to pay people to take? I know of no other field that is going to sustain itself by doing something like that. So we have to figure that out. One of the things I'd been thinking about when we consider this whole paradigm, that these are boring questionnaires, and it's not just health risk appraisals, it's most of the things we do. Most people say, I already knew that. You're not really telling me anything particularly new. But one of the things that we keep focusing on is this right-hand turn we keep taking, or the right-hand direction. We're moving from our decisions to causes of death, or conditions, to medical causes to death, okay? So really, this is not a health risk assessment at all. It's a death risk assessment. And in fact, when you look at HRA, they use Framingham population laboratory data, or Tecumseh population laboratory data, or North Korea, or other places, and they use predictive modeling, predicting what? Death. They're always predicting mortality, or they're predicting some disease that causes death. So really, it's always, the real message is quit smoking or die, eat better or die, get moving or die. No wonder people don't want to do this. No wonder people get kind of defensive about the message once they get this. And I'm using this almost in a metaphorical way because most of our messages in our field, as I see them anyway, have been focused more on the prevention of death. And I started wondering whether that's a good thing for this guy. What is the issue? Why doesn't he do this? Why is he so defensive? Well, I like to look at defensiveness almost as a castle wall. Think about this wall that's surrounding yourself, your real self, what's inside, who you really are. And this wall is called your ego. Your ego is defending yourself. Your ego is kind of the defense mechanism so that nobody can attack yourself because you are defensive. No, if you had no wall ever, people could just say, oh, you have a problem with this, and you'd go, oh my God, really? And you'd get depressed real fast. So we have this defensive wall for evolutionary reasons probably, but boy, have our walls started getting thicker and thicker with all the communications we have. So we have these walls, and by the way, this is nothing new. Buddha talked about removing the veil. People, almost every major religious prophet talked about the importance, and by the way, major philosopher also talked about removing this veil or removing the wall so that you can see more clearly. I think all of us have these walls. I have the wall. You all have the walls in front of you, and we don't see clearly as a result of that. So what can we do about that? How can we start moving into that wall? What are the things we could do with this defensive wall to start reaching the frog and helping the frog decide to make the jump out of the boiling water? Well, one of the things is to lower the drawbridge. We could say, you know what, you watch TV. Every week for half an hour, if you're a right-wing Republican, watch Rachel Maddow. And if you're a left-wing person, watch Bill O'Reilly on Fox. Just for half an hour, that's all we're asking. Just open the wall a little bit. Remember when we were young, I know for me, I grew up in the 60s, and there are only 3 channels on TV, and people actually watched the 6 o'clock news, and we were watching CBS like the vast majority of people. We were watching Walter Cronkite. And when Walter Cronkite finally went to Vietnam, and I was of the age where I just had my draft card, and I was going, wow, this is awful. And Walter Cronkite came out and he said, you know, I just got back from Vietnam. I don't know if this is a good war. I don't know if this is a good idea. And since the majority of Americans were watching him and believed in him, right and left wing, that changed. Suddenly, we got out of the Vietnam War. We did it because we had a greater coalescence of opinion. We don't have that anymore. Now we have a zillion channels. We not only have a zillion channels, we even have more blogs. So we have millions of blogs where you can take your own opinions, you can live in the same castle wall that 20 other people do, and you can just live the rest of your life like that now. I'm very concerned about that, and we need some way to open this door to allow people to become less defensive so we can see other points of view. I think one of the big problems we have in our society is that we just simply don't understand another perspective. So part of doing that is called motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a therapy that helps you, through rolling with resistance and a couple of other techniques, actually helps you deal with this defensive wall. So this is a motivational interviewing counselor. She happens to be my wife, Jerry. So Jerry says, so Vic, what do you think about the results of your health risk assessment? And I go, oh man, I think I'm doing pretty well, actually, yeah. And she says, well, yeah, but Vic, your nutrition score is 2 out of 10. And she's not making a judgment. She's just going, it's 2 out of 10. What do you think about that score? And then suddenly I get defensive. My castle wall is up and it's thick, and I'm going, man, I guess I wouldn't say I'm happy, but I love my donuts. I eat donuts every morning. You're not going to tell me not to eat my donuts, are you? I love Krispy Kreme donuts. Don't tell me. So the wall is way up. Now, what does she do? Because I've just kind of boxed her, right? I've just said, oh, I don't like, you know, I'm not going to believe you because I like my donuts. Boom. Now, a typical health education message, she would be going, yeah, but donuts are bad for you, right? And does she do that? Well, in motivational interviewing, she wouldn't do that. She'd go, well, you know what? We may have to work in the occasional donut, Vic. Wow, she just took my punch and she flipped me over using judo, and I'm on my back going, wow, okay, fine. I guess they're not that, you know, they're not as important as my health. I mean, I really do need to work on my diet, because she just rolled with resistance so effectively. And she looks, you know, she's looking out at the audience going, Vic is an idiot, isn't he? And, you know, men are stupid in general. And then she says, on a scale of 0 to 10, how motivated would you say you are to eat fewer donuts? Where 0 is not at all and 10 is absolutely. And I say, well, about a 7. What are you going to say then? You're the counselor. Yeah? Most people would say, what would it take to become an 8 or 9, right? But she's smart, and so I heard this from some of you too, because you've had motivational interviewing. Why aren't you a 2 or a 3? You seem to really be committed to your donuts. What is she doing? Suddenly, you know, that's kind of strange. She should be trying to increase my motivation, right? No, she should not be increasing my motivation. I should be increasing my motivation, because my next message back to her is, I am going to explain why I am a 7. I'm a 7 because I just turned 50 and I don't want to grow old and fat, okay? So suddenly I become my own advertisement for change. That's not bad. Not a bad move. And then she starts saying, oh, here's a list of different values that people have. Some of the, you know, people find these different values important. Values? Yeah, core values. Being responsible, having a purpose in your life, being helpful to people, having inner peace, believing in justice and social justice, being loving, being spiritual, being forgiving, etc., being grateful, being strong, being in control. Which of these are important? And I may say, well, you know, I want to be in control of my life. I also believe in my family. I am here for my family, and I'm here for my health. So then she just gently moves this in. So Vic, you said that you value being in control, and that you want to be there for your family. How does eating too many donuts relate to these values? And so I then start, you know, saying, wow, my values, they're different from my behaviors, aren't they? My root system isn't connected very well with the tree, and what she's doing really through intrinsic motivation, not by paying me $500 to change my behavior, she's getting me more intrinsically motivated. So one of the things I'd love to figure out, how could we build programs, digital health programs, that start making that kind of connection? And you may go, there's no way, it takes a human being. Well, I've heard that for 20 years, and we keep, you know, being able to do this. I have a feeling, I'm quite optimistic that we could build programs that could help people digitally using motivational interviewing. And I'd love to see more programs like this that start trying to connect with this defensiveness idea. Also, there's a relatively new theory that's being explored a lot more now in the health field. It's called self-affirmation theory. Self-affirmation theory, and the self-affirmation process, I'll say, is the idea of affirming your core values, affirming who you are. And the process of affirming who you are reduces defensiveness. In other words, the process here is if you write down your core values or are rating your core values and then are exposed to a health message that you may normally defend, you're less likely to defend it. I really want to emphasize this. There are a number of studies now, probably about 12 studies in the health area now that are really very positive. Here's another study. Self-affirmation reduces smokers' defensiveness to graphic on-pack cigarette warning labels. So those scary warning labels in the EU, they first had one group write down the current events of the day, then they showed them the scary packs. The other, they had them write down their core values, then show them the scary packs. After writing down core values, that group was about 40% more likely to want to quit smoking and related to the message and listened to the message, didn't defend it. So that's one way to let the drawbridge down. Does that make sense? This is fascinating to me. This is, again, one of these sticky studies that led me to go, whoa, wait, I wasn't thinking that way. I'm so used to telling people smoking's bad for you, and then when I fail, let's ratchet it up. Let's ratchet the fear up. Now let's put a skull and crossbones on the pack. Oh, now let's put a person with a trach tube. Oh, let's put, you know, whatever. It will get scarier and gloomier. Well, why not just focus on a totally different direction of this? Don't derogate this message. Self-affirmation promotes online type 2 diabetes test taking. People were more likely to participate in diabetes risk assessments if they had just completed their core values list. Interesting. So, this is my question. I said, why does writing about important values reduce defensiveness? Turns out Jennifer Crocker, the wonderful psychologist, beat me to the punch. She actually wrote this article. What she did was, first of all, she confirmed what other people had been finding, but she wanted to take a look at people's thoughts while they were affirming, while they were writing down their core values. And what she found is that people were thinking about a connection with loved ones. They were thinking about a connection with their community. They're thinking about things bigger than themselves, what is called self-transcendence. So she said, these studies in concert with previous research suggest that values affirmation reduces defensiveness via self-transcendence. Now here suddenly is a word that's so spiritual that I thought, I'm a scientist. I don't know if I can deal with this word, this phrase, self-transcendence even. And suddenly it's being moved into the scientific realm. One of the ways that you might be able to get rid of your castle is to not do anything about the castle. You just rise above it. You transcend the castle. And by the way, Aldous Huxley talked about self-transcendence. Abraham Maslow talked about self-transcendence. In fact, on the top of self-actualizers, he in fact said, oh, there are self-transcenders. Self-actualizers are achieving your full potential, but that's your full potential. Self-transcenders are trying to achieve other people's full potential as well. Now, does that mean that it's just for the higher upper middle class yuppies and upper class yuppies? Absolutely not. In fact, we have been doing so much research lately over the last couple months because we're building a product in this area, looking at people of all walks of life, and we say, do you have a mission? Do you have a purpose in life? Can you talk about that? And it's amazing what people talk about. People can get in touch with core values in all walks of life, and I think it'd be really exciting to continue this kind of research. Jennifer Crocker's doctoral student had a really interesting study that she sent me, and it's still under review, but it's close now. 92 college students were given an information sheet. So they had to fill out their name and gender and their hobbies and things like that, just a little information about themselves. And they each did this in a cubicle, separate cubicles. And they were told that there were 3 people in triads in each group, but that only 2 people would be selected for a certain task out of the 3 people, and that the 3 would mutually select who they wanted to be in of the 2. Okay, does that make sense? Based on the information sheets. So they gave the information sheets to people, and they said, you pick in your other 2. Now, this is all a sham, it turns out, but in one group they said, you weren't picked by the other 2 people. Based on your information, sorry, but you just weren't. It's like not making the team, You don't feel good. You just weren't invited to be playing with the girls in the playground. You don't feel good. Your ego is threatened, right? So the wall is pretty high. The other group, they said, well, you actually were picked, but we decided to change the rules, and you were randomly chosen to work alone. So there was no ego threat at all in this case. Now, this study has been done by Roy Baumeister and a number of other people already, where they find that if your ego is threatened, you have less self-control. You have less self-control over your diet, less self-control over other issues that you require control, like related to health. So if your ego is threatened, you have a harder time. When your ego is not threatened, easier time. Make sense? Okay, so that study's kind of been done. But here's what they then did. They divided them each into 3 groups. Write down your transcendent values: empathy, gratitude, things larger than yourself, growth, relationships, the community. Write those things down. Those are called self-transcendent values. And by the way, in self-affirmation theory, they don't really distinguish transcendent from non-transcendent values. They just say, write down your values. Jennifer Crocker thought, oh, the real mechanism is transcendence. So that's why she created this study. Or people were asked to write down another set of values that are included in self-affirmation values lists, like power, wealth. Let's call them Charlie Sheen values. Sorry. It's being recorded, I'll be sued. So, or independence, or attractiveness, or prestige, So kind of the modern Hollywood type of value that you're thinking about, but more self-enhancing, right? Or just write down what your daily routine was like today, so in the same amount of time. So both groups did that. And then the real study was this. We have these chocolate chip cookies here. They're fresh out of the oven, they're warm, they smell great. You can eat as many as you want. What we'd like you to do, though, if you do have them, we'd like you to rate the cookies for us. That's our real test. Would you mind rating these chocolate chip cookies? I don't know why, but 100% of the subjects said yes. So they all agreed to do this. And the real test of this was how many cookies they ate, right? So first of all, there are really 3 interesting comparisons here we can make. The first comparison is very simple. If you're just in the control group, the daily routine, did having an ego threat result in more cookies eaten? And yes, twice as many. By the way, all the comparisons I'm showing you are statistically significant that I'm going to show you. So twice as many cookies if your ego is threatened. Now, again, as I said, that test has already been done. There's a bunch of studies of that. Your ego is threatened, you lose self-control. So the other one, though, that's interesting is the self-affirmation test, which is, does writing about your values work better when your ego is threatened than not writing about your values? And the answer is yes, it is. And then the third one, which I found most interesting, is this self-transcendent test. Does writing self-transcendent values result in eating fewer cookies than writing about self-enhancing values? And the answer is yes. So overall, writing about values is good. But writing about self-transcending values that allow you to kind of rise above the castle of defensiveness does seem to help more. Does this make sense so far? Okay. For me, I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of this was very new. Based on the models and theories and approaches that I've been used to for many years, this stuff was very different kind of thinking. So I started thinking about this whole idea again, that that's the model we typically use. The health belief model and all these other models are talking about disease and death a lot. And so I started considering that way, that approach, that direction, as maybe not being the best direction. What if we switched direction altogether? We just changed the entire paradigm and moved it in the other direction. And we started saying, you know what? If you're morbid, you're going to be more depressed. And if you're more depressed, you're going to have a harder time changing your behaviors. And then, if you're having a hard time changing your behaviors, you're going to lose energy or vitality. And by the way, that's exactly what Dietschy and Ryan and other self-determination theorists have been studying more and more now, things like vitality. And then if you don't have the vitality, can you really reach a purpose, an overall purpose in your life that matches your values, that reflects your values? Does this make sense? What if we moved in that direction rather than that direction? Would we start engaging more people? Would we have to pay people $500 to take a health risk assessment? I don't know. But one of the things that's important, and we can even talk about this epidemiologically, Neil Krauss, who's in our department at the University of Michigan in the School of Public Health, has found that having a purpose in life as an elderly person 8 years later predicts lower mortality than not having a purpose in life. That's interesting. There's another study. People who have a purpose in life are far less likely, I believe it's 40%, less likely to have Alzheimer's 7 years later. That's amazing to me. Now, why isn't that study being, promoted everywhere? If we had a new Alzheimer's drug that, reduced or prevented Alzheimer's, it would be a billion-dollar drug. Why isn't this study being promoted everywhere and replicated 10 times? I don't understand that at all. So that's something. If you're a cocaine addict in inpatient substance abuse and you have a purpose in life, you're about half as likely to relapse 6 months later than if you don't have a purpose during that time. If you have a purpose and you're a middle-aged woman, you have better sex than if you don't have a purpose. Not more sex, better sex. That's okay too. So, intensive meditation training, immune cell telomerase activity, and psychological mediators. This is a study that's done with Elizabeth Blackburn, who is the 2009 Biochemistry Nobel laureate. So she started working with a group who were of meditators, where they were meditating for 4 hours a day. There was a waitlist control group. They found that the people who were meditating 4 hours a day compared to the waitlist control group started having a greater purpose in their life as they were meditating more. That purpose, and not the meditation, once they controlled for purpose and put purpose into the model, it was purpose that led to greater telomerase activation. Telomerase, what is telomerase? That's an enzyme in your body that releases to repair the telomeres of your chromosomes. Your chromosomes are kind of, if you think about them as a shoelace, and you have this little plastic, it's called an aglet, the plastic caps on the end of your shoelaces? Those are telomeres, okay? They keep your chromosomes from fraying. And once your chromosomes start fraying through old age or stress or many things, you start getting sick and you start dying. They found directly that as you were meditating more, you started developing a purpose, and it was the purpose that you were developing that led to greater telomerase activity. I find that fascinating. So maybe there are actual physiological, biomedical mechanisms for why this seems to be happening. Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead in the 1800s. He didn't say God is dead because he wanted everybody to be an atheist, actually. He said God is dead because he was worried about mankind. He said, in the feudal system, we all had a religion. We all believed in God, and we all had roles in our lives. Then suddenly, with science and with a lot of other things starting to throw arrows at some of the fundamental elements of religion, and with modernization, with modernity, we started losing our religion. Hence, he said God is dead. But his real concern wasn't that God was dying. His concern was that we were losing a purpose in life. When we had a civilization that all believed in something, that all had a purpose, if you went back to the 1700s or to 2,000 years ago, you'd say, do you have a purpose? Of course I have a purpose. God told me what the purpose was. I know exactly what my purpose in life is. The reason for existential philosophers writing, like Sartre did, books called Nausea, is that he said the existential dilemma of mankind is that we have lost our meaning in life. We don't have a meaning in life. And without that meaning in life, we won't start transcending. So I started thinking and reading much more Nietzsche than I ever expected to in my whole life. But the question is then, how do you encourage a purpose in your life? How do you encourage that at the end? Because that's relevant. Well, one way you could do it is thinking about these values, right? You could start looking at core values. The other way, though, that I've started thinking about is thinking about death. Remember, I've been downgrading death, poo-pooing death a lot. Let's talk about death for a second. Ram Dass, who was a psychologist at Harvard, a famous psychologist, and then he became a famous spiritual counselor in his later life, suffered a stroke in his early 60s. When he got his stroke, he said, ego breaks open, and then you see who you really are. In other words, what he was saying is that illness and death can break open this wall. And you know, I worked in a cancer center for 15 years, and maybe other people can relate to this. When you have death hanging over you, then suddenly you start seeing things more clearly. Epicurus, the philosopher, actually said that death is the unwalled city, believe it or not. So, when they're talking about death or disease or big problems, you start thinking more about this. There's a great book by Todd May called Death. I am really fun to be at, at a dinner party. Yeah, yeah, I think I have to get another drink, Vic. Todd May studied death very carefully. This is an amazing book. He's a philosopher. And he said, death threatens that which it makes matter. What an interesting comment. Basically, and then sure enough, there's a very recent study called Death, Life, Scarcity, and Value. And what they found was that as they started reminding people about death, and they literally would have a headstone, they'd say, would you write your name down on the headstone and what you'd like people to say on your headstone? What should be on your headstone? What do you want people to say at your memorial service? People started thinking more about life and their meaning in life. Isn't that fascinating? So thinking about death actually got people thinking about life more and their meaning in life. Steve Jobs, at his commencement address at Stanford, when he had been diagnosed with cancer, with pancreatic cancer, said, death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. Now, couldn't we build a cool app in that area? I mean, couldn't we think about this where you're starting to think more about what would happen? What would people say about you? And you don't have to go that far even. What do you want on your 100th birthday card? I can imagine a lot of cool things to start getting people to think more about a purpose or meaning in their life, and I think we should go and do that. So that's another thing that I'd like us to consider a little bit more. How about when we're talking about these bigger purposes or missions, let's say we have an app on our phone, and we're building one right now, that has a mission or purpose discovery tool that goes just before a health risk assessment. And then once we have, let's say in an employer setting or in a family or in a healthcare setting or for a whole government, we suddenly start having lots and lots of people's values and mission statements. Could we somehow do something with those missions, with those values, and put them together into a collective mission? Most employers have mission statements, right? How are they usually built? How are the mission statements usually built? Strategic planning, that's right. So we bring in a bunch of people, usually from some marketing company comes in and facilitates a group and with different kinds of people from the company, and they start thinking about a mission, right? And a mission spits out. But is it really organic? Does it really come from that business? Very often it doesn't feel to the average employee there like it's part of that group. Stephen Covey has a book about the family. I can't remember, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. What's interesting, though, he says the family should have a mission statement. I think that's kind of interesting. And you could do that through technology. So you could somehow put that together. Now, how would you put it together? This is another thing I started exploring, bees. Because I read Jonathan Haidt's article. Haidt is spelled H-A-I-G-H-T, I think. He's a wonderful psychologist. And he wrote a book on happiness and flourishing and things like that. He's a positive psychologist. But he wrote a book on hive psychology, which really got me thinking about superorganisms. And how do people act? Because you know what? Again, going back to our own society, we're so fragmented now. We hate each other so much. Right hates left. We're a sick society, in my opinion, and we've lost our direction, quite honestly. And I think we should face that as a society and figure out what to do about it, or we're not going to be a society. So one of the things I started looking at, this is a wonderful book by Thomas Seeley, who's the chairman of biology at Cornell University. And he wrote this book. He's been studying bees for a long time. Turns out that when bees are going out to search for a new hive or search for honey, they come back, they have scouts. 5% of the bees in a hive are scouts, and they tend to be the elder bees. They're smart, they're wise bees. They've got a lot of experience. So they go out, and that's true. They go out and they come back, and then they do a little waggle dance. The duration of the waggle dance that they do relates to the distance of the food source. And then the place that they aim, the angle that they begin their dance, relates to where it is in relation to the sun. So through those two coordinates, they can figure out exactly to the square foot where this potential honey source is, or where the potential is for the new swarm. Because every year, most bees, the vast majority of beehives, have to go out and swarm and find a new hive. And if they don't, they die. And the other thing is, if they split, if they divide in their decision making, they have a bunch of scouts, remember, and if they divide in their decision making, if they don't like each other and they say, okay, you go your way and we'll go our way, they split off and both groups die every single time. The whole hive dies. So this is important. They have to be fully committed. Think about our own society. Think about our election this year. Think about how much dissonance this has created and how we can't agree on with each other. So let's say we had to do something like this, and we had to figure out what goes on. What Tom Seeley did was study over a 16-hour period the debate that goes on among the bees, because they don't agree initially on which place they should go swarm. So the width of each of these arrows is representative of how many of the scouts went out to check that one place out and started voting positively for it. Okay? So right now, you see on the upper left side, you see that pink arrow going to the right. That's the distance, and then that's how many bees voted positively for that place. They said, we like that place, and they came back. But there are other bees that came back. They said, oh, no, we like this place between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. And then a little later, there's a lot of disagreement. You see a bunch of, quite a few bees now are starting to form coalitions going, oh, no, we disagree about this. And you see how it gradually moves. And suddenly it's moving down to between two. There are 12 bees voting for one, and there are 14 bees voting for another in the lower left side. Suddenly, though, there's a massive switch, and people, all the scouts, though, visit every one of these final sites. And then they all end up waggling with their vote. With their waggle, they decide which place they go. And then all of them go there. What they do then, the scouts go back to the hive. They say, we've decided, heat up your wings. They literally do that. Warm up your wings, and we're all going to go there. And they all do. And if they don't all do that, they all die. So they need to decide. So Tom Seeley started thinking about this. Why can't humans make decisions a little bit better? And couldn't we put in decision-making like this? Because what this is actually is not the way we vote for presidents. It's not the way we make a lot of decisions. But it is the way a New England town hall meeting goes. This is exactly how it goes, where there's an equal regard for everybody's opinion. There's no one leader who says, it will be my way. It's not a cult of personality. It's a bunch of different bees who end up voting. And they keep voting, and they take straw poll after straw poll. Now, digital communication could take straw polls on what direction an organization should go and what mission it should have. So I'm intrigued by this, and I just think that we should think about it a little bit. You know, Facebook calls these people information DJs. So we should think about how information DJs are people who are opinion leaders, who find something relevant and are good salespeople, just really into this. They become the scouts in an organization. I'd love to see new communication that way. And then finally, and I'll close up with this, I think we should be starting new things. One of the areas we've kind of ignored by and large is the potential to go into developing countries, and not only developing countries, but lower income populations within our own cultures here with new media, and start developing high-tech, high-touch approaches. Building health navigator models, health coaching models. Muhammad Yunus, who is a Nobel laureate, as well as C.K. Prahalad, who recently passed away but wrote The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, said, we should really be thinking about how we could move high-tech into high-touch, how we could connect the two. For example, Lever Brothers Hindustan is a wonderful example of this, how they've taught people in rural India to start selling public health-oriented products like soap and other things. And they became very successful, and Lever Brothers became very successful because of that. People like Craig LaFay can talk about that a lot more than me. But starting to think about this, all of our tailored programming. Well, yeah, maybe not everybody has a computer, but maybe a health navigator or health coach could be given a computer, could be trained, there could be a microloan sent to them, and a new business could be developed. Thomas Friedman, one of my favorite writers, said the best way to counter the Tea Party movement, which is all about stopping things, is with an innovation movement, which is all about starting things. Without inventing more new products and services that make people more productive, healthier, or entertained, that we can sell around the world, we'll never be able to afford the health care our people need, let alone pay off our debts. So These are the things I've been thinking about. I decided not to talk about the things that we've been doing in the past in our research and what we're now working on. I just wanted to kind of give you a brain dump of some of the things I'm thinking about and some of the hurdles I think we need to overcome in our field if we're going to really build a real field. So I think we need to find ways to reduce cognitive load. We need to help the frog jump. In other words, reduce defensiveness. We need to help our society regain a purpose, and I think we could. I think we could all have a mission of trying to help 1 million people get a mission in their lives, a purpose in their lives, because as Nietzsche said, we have lost our purpose in life. And that's something I think we need to figure out how to regain. Whether it's religious or non-religious, to me personally, doesn't matter. It's important that we have a purpose in our lives. That we create commitment, and by commitment I'm talking about these superorganism hives. Not that everybody has to go lockstep, but that we start obtaining greater consensus, and we have processes for decision making that produce greater consensus. Our processes for building consensus don't exist right now in our culture, I believe. And then finally, enabling economic growth. As Alan Kay said, the best way to predict the future is to actually invent it. And I hope that all of us would think about actually inventing this future. Thank you very much.